KJ and Lyons on WEEI.
Joe brought us all in yesterday and watched film with just like that second and third unit, and I think that was important to have him talk to us and kind of, I guess, talk to us about our role and what we're supposed to do when we come in a situation like that when you're up big, and and what things we're looking to do on offense, what things we're looking to do on defense. So I think hearing that from him just brought a lot of clarity to all of us.
KJ and Lyons on WEEI. Thank you so much for hanging out. 617-779-7937. Text line 37937. Also, shout out to our producer, Justin Turpin, and Zach, who was training today. Welcome, Zach. Thank you. Look, that's Luke Kornet talking about the players-only meeting that Joe Mazzulla had with the bench, right? And it's interesting because at first I was thinking, hey, this NBA Tourney, John, is one of those situations where, hey, $500,000 will look really good to some of these guys 10th, 11th, 12th on the bench, right?
Oh, yeah.
But then I started thinking about how all these games count towards the regular season. And it might be why Mazzulla kind of has to have this conversation with the guys, right? Because I'm going to need you guys for some of these tournament games. But at the same time, I need you guys to be on top of it because there's such a thin sliced cheese margin of error between, say, you lose a couple of these tournament games and you find yourself one game behind the Bucks at the end of the season for home court advantage.
Yeah, I'd almost see. I feel like AJ last year's Celtics would have won the in-season tourney and then lost to the Eastern Conference Finals. So I don't know if I would hate if they didn't win the in-season tourney. But look, I think again, this is a valuable piece of the season for the bench guys. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the regular season tourney. I think most of the courts are really, really ugly. But if it's going to be a higher intensity than your typical December or November regular season game. So I think to have guys like Hauser and Pritchard and Kornet out there in higher intensity moments, it's a really good look at, hey, how might these guys do in the first round of the playoffs? Can we give them valuable minutes? Because you're going to need these guys to have valuable minutes either later in the regular season and for some of them in the playoffs. So if there's one benefit for Celtics fans of this in-season tournament, it's that you can get some higher pressure minutes to some guys that otherwise wouldn't have them until April.
I'm sorry, I hate to be interior design, but the court's ugly.
Oh, it's brutal. All of them. I don't know if I've found one, and I haven't looked at every single one in detail, but I can't think of one I like.
Have you heard the one about the Bulls
also,
logo?
Did you see the Celtics New City Edition jerseys, by the way?
My whole thing is,
I kept last year's.
Well, that's the thing. It's all about like a new thing, right? Yeah. Like creating a new thing. I don't know if you're thinking about the tower right there on 93.
Oh, I tweeted that out this week. That's one of the most iconic landmarks in Boston. They should do a city edition jersey based off that.
Well, yeah, because then you know exactly how long it's going to take you to get through downtown.
Yeah. This is kind of like
30 minutes into
this is an old man take by me, but just teams. There's too many jerseys right now.
Well,
like
it's the
one home jersey, one away jersey, and one or two alternates, and that's it. Like we're talking, like the Red Sox this year. Like didn't wear their home whites the majority of their home games. Like It's nuts. Like if you add up when they wore, red and navy and this City Connect ones, those three combined for more than their actual home whites. Like I don't know, I don't like that.
I did like the one that had kind of like the Gaelic type Celtic writing. It looked like the years of yore. That it had a very new old England to it. But it's something simple. It's still green. You put the Kelly gold in there, the Kelly green and the gold in there. That makes sense. But it's all about making money for the NBA.
I know. They're going to keep doing it.
And the NBA tournament is nothing about just kind of licking their finger and testing the air to see how Vegas will be receptive to the NBA coming there, because they're coming. And I think that's now the interesting part is what team is going to get moved to the East, because I think if there's a second, so Vegas is getting a franchise. Who do you think would be the other city to get a franchise? Because you add one, you have to add two. You have to add two total.
Yeah,
or get rid of one.
I think temporarily what you could do is put Memphis in the Eastern Conference, because I don't even know why. Because they started out as Vancouver in the Western Conference. Like they should be an Eastern Conference team anyway, and then maybe like add a team in San Diego, something like that, like another West Coast city.
Tried that.
Add a team, because you're going to be getting the Supersonics back, right?
So, yeah, I think that's going to be Vegas and Seattle.
Vegas and Seattle, and then move Memphis to the Eastern Conference. And
that's exactly right.
You're okay.
Even though I was like, I wonder would they move New Orleans back to the Eastern Conference? And I looked at
another
map.
Option,
right? But literally, Memphis is just a skosh further east than New Orleans is if you look at the longitude of things. And plus, you start to say, hey, a game in Tennessee playing down in Atlanta makes a little more sense than there being some type of rivalry between New Orleans and Atlanta, where New Orleans, you'd point it towards Houston and Dallas and San Antonio. So it pushes west. But it'd be very interesting to see if Marcus Smart ends up back in the Eastern Conference next year, of all places. But, yeah, look, I can't be mad at the NBA. It's always trying to bring new fans. I wouldn't be surprised if they're not on the phone with, I don't know, either Taylor Swift or can we get Ice Spice just to make it kind of demographically, shifting, if we will, for the NBA
I think they
to
need
show
to
up.
get Taylor Swift to date Jason Tatum, and then they'll bring in a lot of new fans.
Well, then we might lose some
football
fans.
Once football
damn it,
season ends.
throw away those posters. She's gone too far. But the tournament, I think, here's what frustrates me. These are opportunities for home fans to get to some of the games. That's just my issue, right? If you know that there's would have been a home game at TD of Celtics and the Magic, okay, that cost is going to be a little lower. More people will be able to see that game, But I'm not a fan of the tournament at all. I didn't watch any of it last night. What's the point? All they're going to talk about is everything else.
I'm just going to watch the Celtics like I normally would. You know what I mean? Like I normally would. And again, the only real value
it's like a bad AAU tournament. Like I'm just here to watch my kid.
The only value to me is that can some of these Celtics bench guys get minutes in a higher pressure situation than typical regular season? Like that's really, as a Celtics fan, I would care more if those bench guys played well and you lost the regular season tournament than if you won it on the back of Tatum and Brown. Like, I think that's what you need in the playoffs.
Yeah, you remember I was just saying the last break how, like, hey, they're not going to blow people out by 50 every game. And the other thing that the burgeoning narrative that was happening is like, wow, the starting five, they're really getting into the high 30 minutes per game. So you would hope that, and that's probably why you have the closed-door meeting with the bench players only, is like, hey, I can't keep running these five guys out here 37, 38 minutes every night and then expect the game to, to still be in the balance without you guys helping out. And then with Al, it's not like you're like, okay, we can then turn around and put him in for 38 minutes a game. So, I'm so happy how the Celtics have started off, right? I like what I'm seeing from the defensive effort because you see it. It's there. I love how Tatum is going to the hole. I'm really shocked that they have reduced their three-point shots, but they've probably been hearing all of us scream, stop chucking up the threes, because now it seems, and I think Tatum has realized this. If you go to the hole early, you're going to get the calls later. What I think the mistake he was making in the past was trying to get to the goal late in the game. They're not going to give you the calls. So now you're bona fide, like the guy's clearly a bona fide superstar. They've got the whistle waiting in hand to blow the foul once Tatum goes to the hole. So it's good stuff to see, but he's getting to the hole early, and that's so key.
Yeah, and I think a huge thing this year, and we kind of had in our show prep, what surprised you most about the Celtics this year?
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown's three-point percentage. I mean, he's shooting 44% right now. That would be a career high for him. And I think, like you mentioned, Tatum's going to the rack more and getting fouled. And I think the combination of that plus the Porzingis factor, Jaylen Brown's getting, I think, a lot more open looks from three, and he's hitting them at a higher rate than he ever has in his career before. And look, I'm not saying he's going to be a 44% three-point shooter all year, but if he can be 40 or 41%, then I think that's a whole, like if you can rely on him to be that, with Tatum driving the lane more and Porzingis there as well, like to me, that's a huge dimension you can add to your offense if he can hit those consistently.
The defensive rebounding is up 12% from last year. Remember, the conversation was like, man, you're really going to miss that Robert Williams presence that could snatch boards, get you some blocks, easy points. I still miss him as well.
I love him.
But, if there is a bit of a concern, the turnovers are up, but I would equate that to once you start getting into these blowout games and you're putting these bench guys in, those numbers are going to go up. But the rebounds are up 15%. The 2-point shots are up 15%. I mean, that right there is fascinating because there's almost a, 10% difference from last year to this year in the 2-point shot. Because remember, last year it was like, guys, there are other places on the court closer to the basket that you can take shots from. Like nobody had a mid-game. So you're seeing these things, and I think also because of Porzingis, his presence, and knowing that, hey, there's going to be 15 to 18 to possibly sometimes even 25 or 28 coming from the guy that you're not counting on, but is there. And so that's so key for this team this year is I always said, like, you need front court scoring. So size, when you get to the Embiid situations or you got to deal with Giannis, that there's going to be something that's going to impede. I don't know if anybody's going to stop Giannis when a guy picks up a ball and runs for 5 yards and then shoots it. You know what I mean? Like, so
yeah, I think another piece too, Drew Holiday, right? Because that's now at point guard. You have a guy that last year scored 19 points a game. He can hit threes. Like, that's something, and I'm not trying to smack Marcus Smart here, but you just didn't have that reliability of, hey, this guy can, shoot 38, 39, 40% from three.
But he's not
score
conflicted.
19 points a game. Now you have that at Holiday, and I think, again, it all feeds together. Like you mentioned the Porzingis thing, like Porzingis makes guys around him better. Tatum and Brown are already all-NBA guys. Then you throw in Drew Holiday. Derek White and Drew Holiday are elite defenders, but also they can hit shots. Like that, to me, it all kind of feeds together, and that's why I think we've seen, at least, and I don't have numbers for this, KJ, but just my eyes, there's a lot more space on the floor when the Celtics are on offense than last year or the year before, or even back to the years they had Kyrie and Hayward. There's just a lot more space open on the floor now.
Yeah, when you have more space open on the floor, you're able to get more points, and they're up 7.5% year over year in terms of their point total. I think last year at this time it was like 120. Now it's like 127. That number is going to come down, obviously. But what you mentioned with Drew Holiday and Derek White, those guys are not conflicted about their roles, right? Marcus Smart, you have to remember that the guy, like if you said to me, Marcus Smart was a lottery pick in the draft, you'd be like, which lottery? Like supplemental lottery? No. So when you're a top 10 guy, right, and you feel like you're the leader of the team, you feel like you have the ability to shoot, you saw a lot of confliction out there. You're like, hey, look, the greatest thing you do is defense. And sometimes when you're like, look, defense doesn't get you bigger contracts and so forth, you may want to shoot, you may want to distribute more, as you saw the last year and a half of Marcus Smart being conscious of distributing the ball. But that seems to be second nature for Drew Holiday and for Derek White. So, and it's for them, it's like, we want to facilitate the team, we want to defend, and then we'll score. Where with Marcus Smart was like, yeah, I can defend, but I can score too, and I can throw in some assists. And that's where the conflicting that you started seeing. And if you look at what's going on with Memphis now, I think either if they won last night, it would be the first game they won, but Memphis had lost all their games going into last night. I didn't check to see if they played. So here where Marcus Smart was supposed to kind of go, they lost last night, so they haven't won a game this year. So Marcus Smart went to Memphis where he was supposed to solidify things, and that hasn't happened. Now, great time things can happen over time. But, I've said this about this when he went to Memphis. My concern would have been, would he get there and now feel like, okay, they brought me here for a reason, so I need to make my reasons be shown. You're like, no, don't shoot, So, and here you've got a couple of guys where it's like, I might score 5 points, but we'll win by 20. So
yeah, and Jaylen Brown talked about that. I think it was after the second or third game of the year, where he was like, sometimes when you have a lot
after
of talent,
the Washington game,
there's some complacency, and we have a group of guys where that's not going to happen. We make sure we're on each other, and that's so like. And what's the narrative been for? I feel like 5 years now. Hey, wait till the Jays get to age 27. Things change, which historically in the NBA, that's true, right? Guys got to get to 27, 28 years old for Jokic last year before they win. And it really feels like this group, I don't want to say they're more mature than last year, but it's just, I think there's a more intense focus on what we need to, not just, hey, we want to win a championship, but what are the things we need to do to get to that point, which maybe we haven't seen as much the previous few years.
So where I said last year's team, it felt like early on that it reminded me of the 88 Celtics. This team does more just because of the Drew Holiday, Derek White combination. If you're looking at DJ and Danny Ainge at the time, where granted Ainge was a great outside shooter, but you had this grit that existed in your backcourt that when Sheaston came in, Henderson would come in. These guys, it was almost like there was this toughness that existed in the backcourt where here for the last couple of years, it's kind of like, what are we doing in this backcourt? And that's going to be the key until you get to a Milwaukee. Well, now when you get to a Milwaukee, especially now that Damian Lillard's there. So I like how the Celtics have set themselves up. I like the conversations that seem to be happening in the room. Hats off to Joe Mazzulla for taking the bench players in there, right? Because if you felt like that Joe Mazzulla couldn't necessarily connect with the superstars last year, the bench players are definitely going to be listening to Joe and everything that he has to say. So if they know that Joe's strength is to get the best out of the guys that need to give ultimate 10, 12-minute roles per game, that he might be able to do that while you've got the other guys like Cassell and the other ones that are talking about championship pedigree and these things that they've seen in the past and stories. And it's good to see former Celtics that have been hanging out at the facilities. I kind of miss that our building here now was still over at 20 Guest Street. Dude, I'd be my window. It was like right in the parking lot. I'd be able to see who was coming to park, and then just sit there like, oh, I'm next door. I'm next door neighbor. How you doing? So it's really good to see that Celtics identity is slowly starting to seep into the team, where it started to feel like it was peeling away and becoming just another team in the NBA.
Yeah, and you mentioned the backcourt. Like, look at the Miami game. Derek White led the team with 28 points. Drew Holiday led the team with 10 rebounds. And Holiday also had the most assists that night with 7. So, like, certain teams, you're going to need both of those guards to play really well. Miami's a good example to beat them. I think Milwaukee's another. You're going to need White and Holiday to both play really well if you're going to beat Milwaukee, which I think you can, but you're going to need them to play well. And these are two guys. We talked about Holiday scoring 19 points a game last year. Him and Derek White both had a 112 defensive rating last year. Like, so we're talking about two high-end defensive guards. Derek White was the best
top
defensive,
8 for sure.
Yeah, Derek White was the best defensive player on the Celtics last year for most of the season, and he was the third best player on the team for most of the season. And now you put a guy next to him who's just as good a defender, probably a better scorer as well, and most importantly, I think, has actually won a championship before, which I think makes a big difference. So, yeah, that backcourt, I think, and the flexibility you have, right? Because you can have lineups with both of those guys. You can sit White down and just have Holiday. You can sit Holiday down and just have White. You have so much flexibility with both of those guys there because you can trust both of them to handle the ball. You can trust both of them to be able to score, and you can trust both of them to be able to defend at a high level, where in years past there was questions about, hey, can Smart really score? Malcolm Brogdon can't really defend well. Right now, you can trust those guys to do all three of those things.
Yeah. 617-779-7937. Text line 37937. It's KJ and Lyons here on WEEI. Hope your Saturday is going well.
Someone on the text line, by the way, KJ, big on Blake Griffin coming back. Hey, that was fun. Whenever Blake Griffin played last year, I was always fired up. And he's a guy, hey, just for reference, Blake Griffin last year, down the stretch of the year, 25 minutes in late March against Utah. He had 19 minutes against Toronto near the end of the year, so he did give them some valuable minutes. Yeah,
I'm still wondering where people, because I don't even look at this text line. I refuse. That's why I have Justin read them. But, like, yeah, remember people
when
scream.
texters say nice things about me, so it doesn't really happen.
I'm trying to tell you, like, because you're newer here. Like,
no, they still don't say nice things.
What I'm trying to tell you is you're newer here. You just don't even look at them. Right, just don't even look at him. That's why there's a third person that reads them, because he gives a third voice to him as he reads them. But again, and I wonder, where are the people who want Dwight Howard? Right, like, well, bring Dwight Howard in. Like, oh no,
get Kevin Garnett out of retirement.
Right. So these other people that you want to
PJ Brown available again?
You know what? Video games has done this to people, right? Like, they see who's a free agent available, and they're like, hey, they've got a strength of 89. Let's go get him. Yeah, that's not how it works.
I do think, though, that's something. When we look back on the in-season tournament, we're going to know, hey, do they need bench help at guard? Is Pritchard a liability, or do they need bench help up front? I think it's going to be up front, and I think, obviously, maybe not specifically Blake Griffin, but they're going to need a guy with size in the front court, I think, before they get to the trade deadline.
Call me crazy, but if Danilo Gallinari flashes in Washington, why not take that flyer to bring him back?
I wouldn't hate it. I mean, if he can, because he can score, he's got size, he can rebound. Like, yeah, that's a guy that would be a nice fit if he's can be fully healthy. We've seen him out there so far this year, but is he fully healthy 2 or 3 months in? Is he still playing well? Then yeah. And one thing the Celtics have is a lot of mid to moderate tier assets to trade for a guy like that. Bunch of second round picks, later first round picks, like that's stuff that if you're trying to get a guy like that is actually a pretty even exchange of assets.
Right, because think about it, it could be a big cluster, if you will, if he was still here and now you're trying to force minutes onto him just to see what you have because he didn't play at all last year. Better to go ahead and deal him off, right? It's really no money move. See what he can do. You might be in a bit of a bidding war for him, but he might want to, like, you might be using really the Washington Wizards as kind of like your own personal G League team to see what he can do in the minutes he gets there, because they're not going to compete. He's in duplication there with Kyle Kuzma, so he's not really going to see super extended minutes, but he's going to see good minutes. And you might say, hey, this is the guy that if you put next to Horford coming off of the bench and then mix and match along with oh my gosh, like what what game could they not win even in simulation? So before we go to break here, I've got to get to this. James Harden traded to the Clippers back with Russell Westbrook. Now, between James Harden and Russell Westbrook, these two guys may have the most discounted jerseys in sports stores history. Wouldn't you not say? Like, these are the guys that you get jerseys.
They also, by the way, did not get along well when they played together in
Did
Houston.
you see the video? You see the video when Harden came in and the look on Terrence Mann's face? And then here's how you know when you're not really thrilled when somebody's coming in the room is when your voice goes up in octaves. Like, oh, man, good to see you. Yeah. Oh, that's great to see you. It's
if I were the Clippers, I would not have been filming that.
Well, that's part of probably the dysfunction of how to blow all of it up, right? Like, in this industry here, sometimes you start to play really bad music on a station with the whole idea is that you're going to blow the thing up. You're like, why are they playing Omarion next to Britney Spears? There's a plan. They're going to destroy the whole thing or sell it. And that might be what's happening with the Clippers, because when the first thing that comes out of your mouth and you're James Harden, you get to L.A., you're talking about what happened in Philadelphia, and you're saying, I am a system, when there's already a system in place with Paul George and with Kawhi Leonard. It's called, like, load management, right? So
Kawhi Leonard, by the way, who's actually won 2 championships.
Right.
And Ty Lue, a head coach that's won a championship. Like,
right.
I'm so far out on James Harden. Like, I'm all set. If that guy was in the studio right now, I'm so far out on him, I'd be 3 streets over. Like, I can't stand it.
I'm trying to think other sports he would be comparable to. Like, if you would, like, James Harden is the blank of what sport?
I don't even know, because he's such a, like, he was in Houston, a good situation. They're competing in the playoffs. He eats his way and winds his way out of there. Then he goes to Brooklyn with Kevin freaking Durant and Kyrie Irving, and it's so toxic there. He wants out of there.
That was the hamstring from hell,
right?
And
he goes to Philly and plays with the literal MVP in Joel Embiid. And by the way, where was Harden in Game 6 and 7 against Boston?
Do you remember in the playoff game?
And now he wants out of there.
You remember in the game where suddenly when Embiid started going off, it might have been like Game 4. Embiid started going off.
He hit a big shot in Game 4.
He hit a big shot, but he had disappeared for a while, where it was like he was hesitant to shoot the ball. It's like, what is mentally going on right now? Who would he be?
He might be the most selfish guy in this century in the NBA.
It would have been a Carmelo Anthony argument at one time. Because someone told me that
Carmelo, like, he requested to leave places, but I don't remember him like having tantrums and being
demanding eating chicken wings at a strip club.
Yeah, like, I don't know, and maybe I'm forgetting it, but it felt like, and Carmelo played on a bunch of teams later in his career, but most of his career, like, he was on Denver and then he went to the Knicks. Like, he was on there for several years trying to win and just didn't. But I don't know, like, Harden, to me, again, you're at Houston, you're good, and you whine your way out of there. You go to Brooklyn with Kevin Durant and Kyrie, whine your way out of there. You go play with the MVP, whine your way out of there. Now you're in L.A. with Kawhi. You really think Kawhi Leonard is going to put up with Harden trying to be selfish at times?
No.
Like, get out of it. Dude, Kawhi Leonard won a championship almost by himself in Toronto. You think he's really going to put up with that stuff? I don't.
You know what would be scary is if there's still another deal with the Clippers that sends Kawhi Leonard to the 76ers. Because right now there's a discussion right now that the 76ers might be making a run at Jalen Brunson. So if you have Brunson, Kawhi, and Embiid, that
if I'm the Knicks, I say, why don't you send me Embiid? Forget about me sending you Jalen Brunson. You send me Embiid.
Yeah, we'll see how that works. All right, still to come. Would you rather more likely to either or? Plus the Patriots getting ready for their game tomorrow with the Commanders. Red Sox have a new boss in charge, and he spoke. Hang out. KJ and Lyons continues next here on WEEI.